Hello, spiritual Barbies, spiritual Kens. Welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Sisters podcast. It's your favorite spiritual sister. I'm just going to say that every time we have a guest and I'm doing the interviews. Gabrielle Celeste, welcome, welcome. You guys, I'm so excited because I manifested this feature, and I kid you not, I've wanted to do this interview for the last 2 years, and I've been talking about my obsession with incarnation crosses within human design. But before we even get there, I'm so excited to welcome the one and only Brynja Magnusson, the author of Incarnation Crosses, a Guidebook of Purpose Archetypes. Hi, Brynja. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I feel like we got to share before we get into the 5 questions that we like to ask our guests, that the way that this came about is like literally I just shot my shot on my personal account and was like, hey, would you ever want to come on a show? Like, here's the podcast, big fan of your work. And lo and behold, she responded and was so gracious and kind. So yeah, just that's the backstory in case you didn't know, Brynja.
I think it's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
That's what social media is for, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's such an interesting landscape. And I'm just like, social media is like very much like a facade and an illusion, but for networking purposes and getting yourself out there and really like using it as a tool to live out your soul's purpose and mission, it can be very supportive.
Yeah, I think also between artists, it's a really good platform. At this moment, I'm finding a lot of really interesting creators, like artists. It's moved a little bit beyond just my own social network, and seeing how other people are creating is, finding that very inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah. And just for background, and Brynja's going to for sure get into this and all the details, but you're a very talented and impressive artist. Like the book that we're going to discuss alongside your work, and you have decks, which I didn't know. You shared that before we started recording, which I think is so cool. Like very impressive. And if you guys have the opportunity to check out any of her offerings and her creations, like please do so. Like you won't regret it. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get into it, we like to do this like rapid fire questions just to kind of like break the ice and to get to know our guests a little bit better. Would you be so kind as to share what your big 3 in astrology are?
I'm a Aquarius sun, I'm a Leo rising, and I'm a Cancer moon.
Oh, okay. How does the Cancer moon fit in that?
I think it softens everything. I think the detachment that you can sometimes hear about with Aquarius and the coldness gets warmed up by the Cancer moon. And I think like the over the topness of the Leo rising also gets kind of tempered. So I feel like it's like this beautiful child in between my 2 big rising and sun that kind of equilibrates it. It makes it feel a little more warm and tender and down to earth. I'd like to think.
I love that. I'm a Cancer sun, so I'm fascinated by the Cancer moon placement specifically, just because I feel like it just translates very differently, but in a beautiful way.
Almost everyone in my life is a Cancer moon also. My partner is a Cancer moon, and we're also both Cancer Mars as well. My mom is a Cancer moon. His mom is a Cancer moon. My best friend is a Cancer moon. I'm starting to think maybe I can only hang out with Cancer moons.
Well, I'm a Pisces moon, so maybe we can like hang out. The water combo. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any Earth in your chart? I'm just curious.
Very little. I just have I have Uranus and Neptune exactly conjunct, like to the day, in my in Capricorn, and that's all I got.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're both millennials.
Yes.
You and me.
Yes.
Okay. Very fun. Okay. So, what is your human design makeup? And for funsies, can you throw in your specific incarnation cross?
I'm a pure generator, emotional authority. I'm a 2/5.
Okay.
And I am a cross of the Sphinx. I have the 1949 channel and the 14-2 channel.
Okay, you're a Sphinx. I'm a vessel of love, and they're sisters.
Yeah.
Okay,
they're
maybe
like
this is like we got to talk about that because I meet a lot of Sphinx incarnation crosses.
I meet a lot of
which
vessels
I'm sure
of love. Yeah,
that's so interesting. And plug, ladies and gentlemen, the vessel of love is on the cover of the book.
True. Yeah.
Was there a reason for that?
It was the first illustration I did for the book. Was the vessel of love. Okay. And then sometimes the art leads the way in a kind of mysterious way when I'm designing these books, because they're all meant to be beautifully laid out to integrate the information in a more accessible and enjoyable way. Mm-hmm. So often I'll design how the book layout is going to look before I write it. And I'll do the art before I write it in the book. The art almost kind of siphons the information out into the book format. Mm-hmm. And so I think also Vessel of Love is, they give you keys of where your consciousness is supposed to go. And that just really fit for making a project like this.
I love that. Okay, I was like, she definitely chose that for a specific reason, so I'm glad came forth. What's the 2-5 life like?
Well, it's one of the more rare profiles, and you might notice that sometimes people with the same profile, they really gravitate to each other. You see a lot of couples that have the same profile. So when you find out that you have like a 2% of the population profile, it's a bit of a bummer because you don't have as many people that are on that profile wavelength. But I quite like it. I very much embody the hermit. And I find it quite tender. I find the 2-5s and the 5-2s to be in a way like these kind of statuesque hermits. Like they don't realize that they are coming off in this very appealing way. And then there's this very gentleness of the second line to it that really softens that like big projection field of I look good to people. And the second line is kind of this like very gentle inward side of it. But also the second line is so fascinating because they're really good at something. Often second line people like, but they're very, very good at one or two things, and they can just kind of take off really quickly at it. But they're really not meant to be good at everything. And so there's something that's kind of specialized. I think of second lines as like, they're such naturals that they come in like specialists in a way. 5-2s and 2-5s. And this has been an interesting aspect of also doing a lot of writing and publishing in the human design space has really helped me realize that I feel like I kind of careen as a fifth line into a field of study, contribute something, and then leave immediately. You know, I don't feel like I'm meant to really stick around in one particular system. And that's what I did with human design. I kind of careened into it, didn't learn it in a traditional way. I have almost no first lines in my chart. And then deposited something in that might be helpful, and then move to the next thing. And that's also kind of Sphinx energy as well. Cross of the Sphinx has a lot of changing career energy. So that probably helped too.
I noticed that because you did make a shift after you created the book, but in a way that was very much aligned with your purpose and your soul. But I just also want to personally thank you for your contribution in creating the specific book we're talking about today, because you guys, there's nothing else like it on the market. And unless it comes from like the traditional school of thought that Ra Uru, I forget what it's called. I think it's the Jovian Archive. But even then, like the work is so dense to get through. Like you made it make sense in this book. And I value and appreciate that so much. And I just wanted to reflect that back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we can thank probably my learning disabilities for trying to make educational content that's good for visual learners and people who need kind of like beauty and tactile experience in their learning experience. That's what I need, at least. Yeah.
I've had a couple guests, and I'm not asking you to specify which specific disability you have, but I almost wonder if that is also linked to your intuition specifically. And we have a lot of guests on the show that actually have that experience as well. And there are a lot of intuitive guests. I want to add that. I almost wonder if it's linked to intuition. It's kind of my own theory. I don't have anything to go off of other than my experience.
Well, I have a difficult time sitting down and learning. I resist it pretty hardcore. I don't have any diagnosis of it. I just know that I really resist dense information and reading things through in long formats. But I'm really lucky that I was raised by two professional artists that were very successful in their career. And so I was raised with a lot of praise for the type of skill set that I have, and that's not less in any way. And actually, this is a great story. I had a dream that really encapsulates this, which was that I dreamt I was back in like elementary school, and I was taking a big standardized test, and instead of writing the answers, I drew the answers and throughout the whole book. And in the dream, they expelled me for this. And this is interesting because I draw information that I'm learning into textbooks. I have illustrated textbooks. And in the dream, they expelled me immediately. And I was just like desperate for my mom to come. She's a professional artist. And I knew that as soon as she came to the school, she would show them that I was smart and that I did have something worth like being educated for, being kind of appreciated for. And I think that kind of encapsulates the experience of having artistic skill that doesn't necessarily cross over into standardized learning. But for me, it was like I went so deep into the artistic side that it still kind of burst through into a little bit of academic appreciation, or at least on the outskirts of academic appreciation.
That's really, I love that. I love that your parents knew to foster that skill set within you from such a young age, because so often, especially those that are, I guess, working to break out of consensus consciousness, don't realize that like a lot of that programming actually happens when they're younger. So it sounds like your parents did the inverse because they were aware and conscious in their own right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they both made it work. You know, I think they're probably also pretty like ADHD and other things, neurospicy. And they found a way to bring that creativity into successful careers. And so I have good examples of that, as much as I did resist it for a long time.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. The next question, 3 out of 5, is what like audiobooks, books, TV shows, what are you consuming right now that you'd like to share with the audience?
That's funny you ask that, because I have kind of a fantasy audiobook addiction. And I almost have to I kind of have to like keep it away from myself if I want to get anything done. And every once in a while I let myself completely go down the rabbit hole. So I am on my second run through audiobook of The Wheel of Time right now.
Okay.
It takes me like 5 or 6 months to get through the entire series of almost nonstop listening.
Wow.
And it does get in the way of working. And then, you know, I pass through it, and then I try and go on a diet of fantasy audiobooks.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, I try and consume things that are, you know, I can learn from, like whatever topic I'm learning about. So, for instance, right now I'm learning about astrology.
Cool.
I'm trying to read astrology books and consume that kind of media, but it's really it's duking it out for Wheel of Time fantasy at the moment.
Yeah. I think they just canceled that show on Amazon. I'm like, guys, come on.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Yeah. I'm reading or I'm listening to the dramatized version of The Fourth Wing, Onyx Storm, parts 1 and 2.
I heard that's very good.
Yeah, it just, the movie version compared to the regular audio version, night and day. I'm like, I could listen nonstop, and I drive a lot. So it's nice to have that in the car.
All right. So I'm going to have withdrawals when I finish Wheel of Time in about 2 weeks. So
yes.
Would you suggest The Fourth Wing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. She has, I think, like 2 more books to go, but she's like, I'm not in a rush to like create them by any means. I'm like, all right. So I kind of have to like stop myself before I finish this one, because I know I'm gonna have to wait a significant period of time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, noted.
Yeah. Okay. So if you had the opportunity to work with in either collaboration, work for, however you want to frame it, with an artist, living or dead, who would it be and why? And it could be anyone too. It could be a public figure. It could be anyone worthwhile to you.
I think actually the thing that there's many artists that I like and writers, but the thing that's most exciting to me is the synthesis of opposites. So I want to work with scientists and naturalists. This is a huge dream of mine, and this is how a lot of artists got really big, is that they found a way to find the intersection between art and science. And that's a very fertile ground. And so I really admire biologists, people who are researching mushrooms, psychedelics, like people like Paul Stamets, people like Michael Pollan. These types of scientific public figures really interest me, and I would love to have some kind of art collaboration with someone that's doing fascinating research. This is how Alex Gray became incredibly famous as a painter. Is his art was put on the cover of a research book about DMT. And then he kind of became this emblem, this visualized emblem of a field completely outside art. And I feel like this has been the same with my work, is the art is there to support learning and information. And I want to continue more and more to be working in tandem with fields that are opposite from woo-woo spiritual stuff, art stuff. I like both sides, and I think it balances it out for me to be on the scientific side, even if it was someone with very like unrelated research, like evolutionary biology. I would be fascinated to work in that middle ground.
It's really cool to see that intersection come forth and gain more popularity, as I think it will in the next years to come, because it's not widely explored. And I almost wonder if like the powers that be don't want that to be the case, because then in some way it undermines their force over the consensus, I suppose.
Right. And it's also terrifying for scientists to step out of line. And they get really shunned from their careers if they do anything that's a little too out there.
Yeah. I also just want to point out, I was like, that's very Aquarian in nature, and I love that for you. Yeah. Okay, final question for the rapid fire. If you had the opportunity to go to a concert for any artist, living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Like a musical concert?
Yeah.
Oh, God. I'm not really a concert person.
Okay.
But you know what I will say? I saw Snow Raven live. I almost saw her live last week again. I've never had an experience of a live performance like Snow Raven. It's one of these things that you can't get the transmission not live, because she does shamanic work on stage, and she's evoking nature sounds, and she's bringing you on drum journeys, and there's something that's there live that is really indescribable. And I would love to experience that again.
I love the name. I've never heard of this artist, but now I'm definitely going to go search.
She's a Siberian woman.
Okay.
And she does shamanic work. And she's really wild.
Ravens are my main guide, so I'm immediately attracted just based off of the name.
Yeah, look her up. She's wonderful.
I will. Okay, so getting into your work. So if you would be so kind as to share how you got into specifically incarnation crosses within human design and studying human design, and also sharing what an incarnation cross is, and just kind of touching on all of those points, we would be so grateful. And personally, I am so intrigued to hear, because again, incarnation crosses are a very specific point within the human design world.
Yeah. Well, I started studying human design about 10 years ago when I was around 23, I think 22 or 23, because I was about to go do a live-in apprenticeship with a shaman over in France, in Basque Country. And he had said, before you get here, we need you to be proficient in human design, because he uses human design with his clients. So I self-studied it before I got there. And then I was living there with a couple of people who spoke in human design terminology all the time. So I was kind of immersed in it that way. And that was my introduction to human design. And then eventually, when that apprenticeship ended 3 years later, I started publishing notes on things that I was using throughout that apprenticeship and learning, like human design and the gene keys, but also my main system of divination, which guides most of the decisions in my life, is animal divination, animal medicine, and the I Ching. And so I published a book called Animal Totems and the I Ching an illustrated book that's comparing the archetypal, the symbolic meaning of these I Ching languages. So I Ching, human design, the gene keys, they're all different varieties of this ancient proverb advice. Mm-hmm. And then putting that next to animal totem meanings that are synonymous with those archetypes. So I published that book. And then while it was getting ready to come out in its final editing phases, COVID happened. And I was stuck at home and had nothing to work on. And I had decided that I would republish an old project, which was study cards for learning human design. So I had illustrated pictures that would go with each part of human design. So illustrations for the gates, for the channels, and for the types and profiles. And when I republished it, I decided, why don't I put in the missing piece, which is Incarnation Cross? Because whenever I'm talking to someone about human design and the Incarnation Cross section comes up, I have no idea what to tell them. And I just go onto a website that gives this little description, but I have no idea what it means. So I spent COVID, the lockdown, there's a 12,000 page audio transcription of Ra, the guy who created human design, speaking about the crosses, but it's kind of sprawling, and a lot of it is him kind of trash talking certain crosses, and it was kind of hard to parse out the pieces there. So I combed through this giant document, and I tried to get the common denominators of each of the crosses, and what each of the 4 gates kind of looks like as a theme. And then I put that together into notes of what's the overall theme, what does each gate look like. This came from the gene keys in its lower form and higher form. And then I just consumed as much content as I could about what Incarnation Cross, how it expressed. And then I published it in this deck. And then what happened was I was invited to come on a podcast to talk about Incarnation Cross. And I didn't realize that podcast was one of the biggest human design podcasts. Luckily, I didn't know. Yeah.
That's how I found you.
I think it was my first podcast I'd ever been on ever in my life. And I luckily didn't look it up ahead of time, because I think I would have been incredibly nervous. And it went really well. And then what happened is I started getting dozens and dozens of people requesting readings for their Incarnation Cross.
Wow.
And then that really forced me to gain as much information to kind of really expand on this part and how it connects into the rest of the chart. And then that became so overwhelming that I said it would be more accessible for people if I could put all of these notes of these readings that I'm doing into a book, so that I don't have to say it to people individually. They can just buy it and have all of the notes that I've come up with. And so the second part of your question is, what is Incarnation Cross, and what does it mean in human design? And the short answer is that your cross is it's like a thematic of the 4 most prominent archetypal gates. I think of gates as like archetypes of consciousness. And so they're the most prominent archetypes of consciousness that throughout your entire life you will be learning about. And learning about them means the highs and the lows of each, the whole spectrum of each one of these archetypes of consciousness. And most interestingly, your cross is actually not there for you. Its function is not for you to be learning about this. You will just happen to learn about it throughout your life. But its real function is for other people to get a dose of this archetype that you are carrying. In the way that you become most in touch with your cross is through your type. And that's the other secret key about it. And Ra, the guy who created human design, didn't even want to publish any information about cross. He didn't want it to be an accessible known part of human design, because he was afraid that if people saw this description of your purpose, that they would think of it as this carrot at the end of a stick, and they would try and choose careers or choose actions in life that matched with the description of their cross, and it would kind of be like they were chasing something that they had constructed about what these archetypes were. But instead, you can think of it like, if you are most in alignment with your type, whether you're a projector or a generator or a manifestor or a reflector, when you are really following the directives of your type, where it's telling you to go, you can think of it as your type is telling you to go into situations where your cross is needed. So for me, I'm a cross of the Sphinx. If I'm really following my generator, it will lead me, it will light me up into places where someone or something needs the cross of the Sphinx. And that's how you end up in situations where you're seeing your purpose come out. And sometimes it's just your aura. You don't have to be doing anything specific related to this theme. You just carry that aura. So you can even think that if somebody comes into your life with a certain incarnation cross, they don't have to do anything. That theme is about to start coming up for you. And so, for example, my partner is a cross of insight, a juxtaposition cross. But it's all the same gates as the cross of dedication. And that's how you can, if you have a juxtaposition cross and there's almost no information about it, you can look up the crosses that have the exact same gate numbers, and find pretty much the same theme. And so when I met him, I realized, he's come into my life because things that I never thought would become manifest, things that were really locked up here, will have the ability to come out and be acted upon. Cross of dedication. And so, yeah, it's an interesting way to see how our life themes are affecting others, and also these major rolling themes of going up to the highest aspect of our cross and then down into the lowest expression of our cross, and that constantly cycles up and down. And by going through the highs and the lows, we get like a pretty good mastery of what it feels like to be in these different phases of that consciousness of whatever cross we are embodying in this lifetime.
I also just wanted to, a couple points that you just shared, which you did so beautifully, so thank you for sharing that. In the back of this book, she actually, Brynja, you did a wonderful job of like, if there's no information, if like, for example, the cross of dedication, I believe you said, you can look up this instead, and it's almost kind of like a beautifully composed index at the end of it, that allows you to kind of just look for said cross that, you know, may not have that much information available on it. And again, just to reflect back to you, there's quite literally like nothing else like this on the market. Like, I remember finding because I was looking up the topic specifically, and I went and I found Emma's podcast, which you were on. And then I was like, okay, and I think I found the book on Etsy. So it was very like divinely orchestrated in the way in which I came across it. So I just wanted to share that. And it's almost kind of like the way that you described it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like your incarnation cross is your job description, like your soul's job description in this lifetime.
Yeah. I did write that in the book in one place, to kind of like an analogy to think of, okay, if your cross is your job description, how do we work on our job then? And that is the daily directives to your job, that you show up to work every day with this major overarching theme description, is your type. So if you're a generator, your response is your daily directives of how you work on your cross. And the hang up here is that someone might try and choose a job that they think aligns with their cross. So for example, a cross of service, they might think to themselves, oh, I'm a cross of service, and therefore I'm supposed to be at service to something. So I'm going to try and choose a service-oriented job to be most of service. When in reality, the thing that they are in service to. And really the function of the cross of service is to help people get their shit together. It's very organizational in a way. It might be that there's like someone down in Peru that needs them, like on a farm somewhere, not at a big city like charity organization. And their generator, if they're a generator, will tell them, here's where we need you to be of service. It's not at the job that your brain thinks is related to your cross. It's somewhere that you can't possibly have imagined. But if you just keep listening to your strategy, we'll put you into the correct place and job for this major, like, mechanical, archetypal influence and where we need it to go in the world.
Yeah, definitely. Would you say, and I just kind of want to touch back on another piece before I ask the next question. It really feels like this was like a divine project that was almost like assigned to you with your skill set, not only being the writer, but the illustrator as well for the book, because you have a very specific skill set that allowed you to quite literally create this and put this out into the world. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I have a very specific cycle for trying to call in projects to me. Every year, I do it around the end of the summer. I start to try and like ask projects that need to be made to come into my life in some way. And there's a really great TED Talk by Elizabeth Gilbert about how we have a creative genius. And if you want to be a healthy artist, it's good to think that you're working with something outside yourself. And there's this beautiful idea of that if you keep creating things, you will start being given, like, creative spirits will want to come to you and give you projects that they know you would be good. You have like a reliable resume or a track record, like you're just creating things. And if you think of some of the best creators who are probably channeling things, like Carl Jung or Tolkien, who were living at the same time channeling similar visions, they created a bunch of stuff before these visions came to them. And it was like, if you keep letting the movement move through you and you keep showing up to work every day saying, I'm going to create something, I think you get better projects brought to you from spirit or from creative energies that are roaming the land, wanting to find someone to make their thing, this thing that's floating in the ether. And I also benefit from this because it gives me something to light my fire to get me through the winter. I create almost exclusively in the winter season. So I do all of my writing and illustrating then, and then try and get it done by the spring or the end of summer and have it out into the world. And then I, again, will call in, please let something new come into my life. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have projects that kind of floated out of the ether.
Are you available and able to share what you're working on now? I know we're in the fall, kind of the middle almost. Yeah, can you?
Yeah. So I am I'm learning astrology. This often pairs up with the thing that I'm feeling like, here's actually my generator response is like, I have the turn on to human design, or I have a turn on to this, or I have a turn on right now to astrology. So that's part of also the directive of like, I'm really interested in astrology. How can I create a project that feels like I can bring others along on the learning journey? Because astrology is really daunting. There's so much information to learn. Same with human design. Same with any of these big systems. So this is a little bit more of a fun project for me, but I'm illustrating all of the placements of, for instance, like your Venus placements in every zodiac. So I'm kind of anthropomorphizing each one of the planets in each one of their placements. So Venus, what is she wearing when she's in Taurus? And why does she like it? And how does how it's kind of taking like how we stereotype people and things based on what they're wearing and what they look like. But then, for example, Saturn, what does he look like? And why does he hate the outfit he's wearing in Aries? And why does that not, work for him? Why does that feel inappropriate?
I love it.
Why does the Cancer Mars wear that, and why is this uncomfortable for him?
It's so good.
I'm really having fun with it. In fact, I've been kind of like antsy, waiting for the opportunity for things to quiet down enough that I can work on this project. So I've so far illustrated the Moon, Venus, Mars, halfway through Saturn, and I'm working into Jupiter now. I've probably got my work cut out for me, but this is often how it goes, is that I'll have a lot of fun illustrating information that I'm learning, and then I have to organize it into a good looking book, and then I have to write everything, which is kind of the hard work part.
You're literally, you're so much more than this, but you're quite literally an artist for the esoteric occult world, and you're doing it in such a way that I don't think anyone else is right now on the market in the industry. That's really, really cool.
Well, I hope so. And I'm, also a small creator, so I'm trying to figure out how I can continually make as many books as possible, and also be the only one in charge of my business, which presents its own, publishers don't want to work with you after you've self-published. So that's pretty much out the window. But that's okay. I'm kind of seeing how I can structure, allowing there to be an open channel for projects that want to come through. And often I do make things just because people ask. They say that they're interested in learning something and wanting illustrated guides for it, and I'll make it.
Yeah, you're quite literally living out in real-time form the Sphinx life, the incarnation of Cross of the Sphinx. So I love that.
Part of that also is that with all of the incarnation crosses, you'll probably go through periods where you're feeling like shit, you're not doing well, you're depressed. It's normal. It's normal to go through cycles where everything sucks at certain points and you get depressed to varying degrees. And you might see that your incarnation cross really encapsulates the version of your depression or of that low period. And for a cross of the Sphinx, the low period of a direction-oriented cross is having no direction and being very, very lost, getting very, very turned around. And I go through these periods like maybe once every few years, every 3 or 4 years, where like my career just kind of like explodes and everything becomes dark and misty, and like the path that was like so clear earlier is just gone, and I kind of just spin around in circles for a while. And then by being in that period, by fully embodying the lostness and the disorientation of the low frequency of the Cross of the Sphinx, somehow I come out of that like almost like clutching the next direction. Like the compass needle needs to go through periods of complete disorientation to change, to switch directions. But that applies to every cross. So, for example, cross of service that we were just talking about, this is about having your shit together, like really having everything organized and having integrity. In their depressive periods, they don't have any shit together. They're like absolutely the least shit together people. And through going through periods like that, they can come out kind of clutching the information of how and where to have the shit together again. So what's your cross?
Mine's the cross vessel of love, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right. We talked about that. Yeah. And so interesting, similarly to the cross of the Sphinx, people with vessel of love also have this kind of tug of purpose, because consciousness and human design, love, the term love in human design is not so much like how we think of it in a romantic sense. Love is a little bit more like, where is consciousness asking your attention to flow? And so vessel of love people, when you're with them, like you can feel like your being might be getting the keys and alignment to, here's where my attention is supposed to be. That's why it's so related to the cross of the Sphinx. And so, but also vessel of love people will go through a phase where they're so mean to themselves, and it's so self-critical, and it's so confused about who they are and where they're supposed to be. And then from that, if they can really sit into it, can come out of it feeling like, I know who I am and where my attention is meant to go.
Yeah, I just, something that you said, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. It's almost kind of like the incarnation crosses are like a direct, surefire way of like, this is like the direction in life. It's like a map almost, quite literally. And it's almost, I feel like a lot of the visuals that you created have a beautiful layout of like which of the energy centers are most active for the crosses. Within the book as you've created and you've gone, but it's like, it's almost kind of as though the incarnation cross has like the high vibe, the high frequency, and then the low vibe is quite literally like your shadow. And if you want to get like directly to the point of what that is for you, just literally look up your incarnation cross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you want even more information, the Gene Keys will give you like fully expanded information about what each one of those gates looks like, which I always recommend to people who want to go deeper.
The Gene Keys are, yes, I've been in a year of shadow work, and I'm just like, God, it's been my Bible for sure. Yeah, absolutely. You can tell you dove into that for your creation of said book. I just wanted to know, is there any which way, or is there kind of like a general advice that you could bestow to someone that allows them to identify if they are or are not moving in the right direction? Like, is there any specific area within someone's incarnation cross that's going to give them an answer that, like, hey, maybe you want to go in this direction as opposed to another? Would it be like maybe their unconscious earth or conscious earth or conscious or unconscious sun?
Yeah, it's a boring answer, but it's the truest one. Is it does come back to your type. You can think of your incarnation cross as like a flower that blooms when you have a healthy type. Like if you have a plant that's not healthy, it's not going to bloom. And so if your strategy is not being followed, you are not going to see your cross coming out. And so you can really gauge the health of someone's cross and how well that they're able to tap into that through checking the health of how they're accessing their strategy. So if you have a generator and they're not turned on by life, there you go. You're not going to see them expressing the flower of their incarnation cross. If you're a projector and you are feeling unrecognized, unappreciated, like for a projector, their whole way of finding through life is support. It's support is like the little key, like sparkle that says like the support is here. This is a way to go if you want. And so if you're a projector and you're not getting support, that's a good way to say you're not going in a direction where you're going to find really beautiful, fulfilling expressions of your cross.
Would you, okay, just because I feel like, no one in this audience, I think, would even have this question, and maybe this is my unconscious reflector coming out. But have you discovered any like points in the system that have caused you to have like personal moments of maybe doubt about the system or any of like the esoteric systems out there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Are you kidding? Like I didn't want to be anywhere near human design for many, many periods. And that's usually because people are using it in really unhealthy ways. And with any system, people can latch onto it and use it as a tool for control or harming others. And you always have to be on the lookout. No matter how beautiful or accurate a system is, it can always be taken in that direction, and you always have to be looking out for red flags. And so, absolutely, I've had people use human design in ways that I felt really messed me up. And, I have an open throat. You wouldn't believe how many people tell you to just shut up when you have an open throat. We don't want to hear your message, and until I give you permission to speak, you're not allowed to say anything. Like, this is so common for open throats, and it really hurts people. I've watched people, including myself, just instantly lose their voice and not be able to speak because someone has decided that they have the right to tell anyone else how to speak. And I tell this to anyone that I'm doing a reading with in human design at the get-go. If you feel anyone is trying to control how you're supposed to be acting, this is not the function of human design. It's supposed to actually lift any burden of how anyone else has asked you to act. It's just here to help you feel yourself. So if you're seeing anyone using this controlling language, they've probably come by it honestly, because so many people, it's very seductive to have someone tell you, you are meant to act, you have to act like this. But it's also, if it's not going to help you in the long run. And I also feel this particularly with the way that projectors are described. I think from the source material, projectors are really misunderstood in the language of the system in a way that I think harms them. And I think of projectors as the feminine energy type, the most feminine energy type of all of them. And here we have a super masculine manifestor guy creating a system and then describing this feminine energy type as how he thinks the feminine is supposed to express, which is just wait for the masculine to come invite you. But projectors are, if they're so embodying feminine strategy, it means that they have just as much power to manifest. It's just done oppositely. And I think the language of human design tells projectors that they are kind of at the mercy of the world, when in reality they're just paradoxical. And it just takes a different perspective to see how you can move the world around you as a projector to your favor, and you're not helpless in any way. And it is upsetting to see people come into the system, feel recognized as a projector, and then be told, shut down as how they can move through the world.
Yeah, I think this next question I'm going to ask is a little bit controversial, but I'm just curious because, again, I don't know anyone, even in the schools at the Jovian Archive, I can bet that they haven't done this, that quite literally has combed through a 12,000 page document and gotten and synthesized it and gotten the most important parts and created something beautiful that's practical for people to understand. But I definitely, and this is more of a comment before the question, it's interesting because out in this space right now, I've gone through a really hard year with, and I try not to use the word hard, with shadow work and really being in the shadow frequency of my personal Incarnation Cross. So I feel like I really understand that. I'm excited to get and see the other side of it and its highest frequency. But there's a lot of people in this space right now that operate from a place of greed, and they lean towards human design and don't really understand it and see it as a language, and quite literally project their own bullshit onto other people in readings. And it's because there is money to be made in this industry, and even more so as time comes. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. But the primary question I was going to ask is, are there any teachings that you actually disagree with Ra's work as you went through this whole process?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, sometimes it's hard to parse what you've learned from someone else and how that's just been interpreted differently from Ra. I already mentioned it. I think the way that he describes projectors, I think, is just at its root a misunderstanding of how the feminine functions, how yin functions as a paradoxical, counterintuitive way. One thing Ross said that I really disagree with is that eventually like will always be with like. Generators will be with generators, and, the same definitions of centers will be with the same, and that's what's good. I totally disagree with that, because always opposites, yin and yang, need to be together. And if you separate them, a system will die. The fertile place is where things come together. I think open emotional centers and defined emotional centers, they help each other. But it's like trying to get a good relationship between masculine and feminine, man and woman. There has to be an understanding of the opposite. and also a deep respect and care for the opposite. The last human design conference I went to, I gave a big class about looking at each one of the centers as yin and yang. So a yin emotional center, a yang emotional center, and then through a perspective of yin and yang, how are they helping and loving and supporting each other instead of they are enemies? You know, there's like emotional racism and terrorism in the emotional center between people. There's like a lot of animosity between differentness, I think, in a design. And then, of course, there's a lot of these blanket statements of like, everyone who has this definition is XYZ. And you see this in astrology as well. And then people get angry when you move away from the dogma of this is how it's supposed to be said or used. I've heard about human design like workshops where a woman will like, she will pick apart every little action that you do to make sure that you are operating out of your strategy. And I don't think that is what this system is. I think the system is purely sensation based, and a sensation based program does not control. And my mantra for any controversial topic in any realm is always that if you are trying to control or separate, you are going in the wrong direction. And I think that applies in human design as well. Any type of control is a huge red flag. And this was a quote from Michael Harner. He said, if you want to identify if someone is a real guru or a fake guru, shaman, whatever, insert word, spiritual teacher, you can always identify it with a true spiritual teacher will never try to control how you act or make you do anything. They have no interest in doing that. And so detecting where there are control tactics is, I think, what keeps you safe in these spaces. And keeping it, like holding systems very gently in your hand and letting them be movable and changeable. And systems are always evolving. Like human beings for thousands of years have been taking systems and just slowly changing them. Vedic astrology to Western astrology, they all work. They all have the potential to reflect back to us. And as long as we just keep an eye out for, you have to do this, you have to act like that, this will at least be something that can keep us on course with it. And unfortunately, people are going to use systems and get hurt by them by not knowing. But, you know, this is what happened to me in human design, and I still am able to use it once that was separated out a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's you can tell that response was coming from a place of experience. So I really appreciate that. I feel like I could talk with you forever. You are a wealth of information and knowledge, and I just know it. I see it. I feel it. Tell us what we can expect from you in the future in terms of your artistry with astrology, where people can find you, what offerings you have available now. Are you still doing readings? We like to say, tell us all the things here on the show. So please tell us all the things.
Okay. So yeah, I'm still writing books. My website is ceremoniance.com, or you can find me at Brynja Magnusson on social media or Ceremoniance. So I have several books and card decks out through an assortment of illustrated topics in the esoteric world. Writing an astrology book now, which I hope will, if I'm really on task, I might get it out by the summer. And then I'm also, you know, it's very Sphinx style, have been thrust into the art world. And that, you know, the leap of faith of having a generator sometimes is, you know, sometimes it tells you like, okay, your being is turned on by this career now, and it's going to make no sense for several years. So there's something going on in the painting world right now. I think that will eventually manifest into more workshop oriented, experiential oriented spiritual practice on its way into that direction. But for now, my big contribution to the spiritual community is simply through making accessible workbooks, guidebooks, reference books, or philosophies that other people can kind of come along on the ride of learning. And have the idea is if you can pick something up over and over again to reference back to it, that's really my goal with this work. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I do. And I do readings.
Okay.
I do human design readings, Incarnation Cross readings. I do Ching readings for people going through an emergency or a crisis. They're really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And they can find all of these offerings on your website, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And then on Instagram, we'll have the links in the show notes as well. So be sure to check those out. But you also were so kind to share quite literally like the decks that you've created before we started recording. Would you mind pulling a card for us and also sharing which deck you're pulling from and where we can get that as well?
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to give you the rundown again. I have Arcana Anonymous, which is recovery-oriented tarot for people going through 12-step or addiction recovery of any kind. I have Animal Totems on the I Ching, which is animal totems paired with human design and I Ching archetypes. I have Yin Mysticism, which is yin, feminine-oriented mindset deck. And then this is a card deck that you don't really pull from. It's human design study cards. So I'll let you pick which one interests you.
Well, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to look at the visuals because the decks are stunning. But I like number 3 because it's all about the yin energy. So, and we're focused on that around here.
Yeah. Okay. So, are we pulling a card for anything specific?
Yeah, for the audience, and trusting that the message that they hear, whenever it is that they hear it, is meant for them to absorb, and all the things.
Wow, interesting. Well, for whoever needs to hear this, I pulled the pregnancy card.
Oh.
Which doesn't always have to mean physical pregnancy, but it means development and growth and creating new things. And for me in particular, I feel like I get pregnant every single year with a new project. Mm-hmm. And I think also, I don't have the book in front of me, but the book that goes with this deck talks about how we can relate to all phases of confusing areas of life through having a deep understanding of yin, which is very hard to understand, but through understanding it, we promote a much, much better, easier, sagely life. And the relationship that we have to yin in pregnancy is that when you are pregnant with something, you are in a very yin space. More and more rest and gentleness and nourishment is going to end up creating a better product, whatever you are creating. Maybe product isn't the right word, but the child that is gestating within a person. And for me personally, when I am in a creative pregnancy, I let myself be very, very inward. And I'm not going out of the house too much. I am taking deep, deep rest. And I get a lot done through incredible deep rest. Mm-hmm. So I think you can, whether or not you are pregnant or wanting to get pregnant, if you're wanting to be pregnant with a project, which, I mean, who wouldn't? Who doesn't want to be pregnant with a project? I think it is a deeply rest-oriented period. And like, for me, even personally, I wouldn't even drink coffee if I'm going through a deep creation pregnancy phase of my life. Yeah. Because the more you sleep and get into those yin waters, the more you're going to have the very sensitive hearing and intuition to things that are coming out of that quiet and forming in that sense.
Yeah. That's beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pretty sure I've said this on the show before, but everything you just said, I'm like, creativity is divine feminine energy, period, point blank. Mm-hmm. Tell me otherwise. So good. Thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed our time together. I hope you did as well. I know our audience is going to appreciate this. And guys, shoot your shot. I swear, this has been on my mind for 2 years, and I'm just so grateful that this all came together. Thank you so much, Brynja.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Until next time. Bye.